welcome to episode 329 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Ash Baker,
Michael O'Malley.
And joining us today for the very first time is Seth Troyer. You may have seen Seth's written review of The Plague Dogs on the website. Seth, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast.
My pleasure.
So we have a usual episode, movies that we saw this week. In part one and in part two, we will be talking about 3 short films by the Soviet-Russian animator Yuri Norstein. We'll be talking about The Heron and the Crane, Hedgehog in the Fog, and Tale of Tales. But first, let's go ahead and jump into movies that we saw this week. And Ash, I'm going to start with you. You saw the what seems to be the movie of the season over on Hulu. And we are hotly anticipating your written review about it. But for now, tell us a little bit about Happiest Season.
Happiest Season, we had a wonderful first edition of Twitter LGBT Cinema Club, and watched Happiest Season on the Hulu party streaming platform, which we learned at Hulu is the worst streaming platform for, like, not streaming platform, but party platform for streaming with groups. It was sort of out of sync the whole time, but that didn't stop us from enjoying the movie. Happiest Season is really unfair in the way that it puts all the hot people that you can imagine, except Mads Mikkelsen, into a single movie and just lets them be in a movie together. It's really, this on lesbian Twitter this movie has gotten a lot of flack. And I went into it thinking, oh, this movie is going to be so terrible. And you know what? I cried twice. And I'm not ashamed of loving it, even though it was very stupid in moments. And yes, it was like the Hallmark movie that of like LGBT cinema. But you know what? We deserve that. Because Hallmark bans LGBT kisses on even the commercials that they show between Hallmark movies. So fuck Hallmark and let there be an LGBT Hallmark movie for us, because we deserve that. My second point about this movie is that Kristen Stewart and Aubrey Plaza are both in it on the screen together in multiple scenes, and they do not kiss. This is something that I knew going into the movie, and yet I watched it anyway. And I thought that I would come out of it being okay, but I was not. However, as a movie, as a narrative, Happiest Season could have been better. It sort of started out as like a Get Out or like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner beginning. It was like more of the Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, like ha ha ha, and less of the like holy shit you're gonna get murdered thing. But it still had those vibes. Dan Levy just straight up played the comic relief friend that I'm calling on the phone from my straight girlfriend's house constantly while I'm here. or closeted, I guess. But we loved it. We love seeing Dan Levy. We love hearing him talk. We love everything he does, and we're glad that he was there to be the fairy godmother in this movie. We're not sure how we feel about the fact that the couple didn't break up at the end. Because maybe they should have. I don't know. But the fact is that K-Stu and Aubrey Plaza had far more chemistry the entire time. And if there's not a follow-up movie, maybe it's not a sequel, but if they are not in a movie together soon, in which their mouths touch, I will not be okay.
For whatever reason, I'm like imagining Ash explaining this, but like they have like action figure dolls of K-Stu and Aubrey Plaza, and they're like, and if they don't kiss, and you're like putting the dolls together, like this is what needs to happen.
That's exactly what I want. I wish I had voodoo dolls of Kristen Stewart and Aubrey Plaza so that I could just mush them.
So to back us up a little bit, just because Ash loved the review, but you did dive in and tell anybody what this movie's about.
Oh my god. Oh my god, I didn't say what it was about.
No, it's fine. So Happiest Season, Clea Duvall, directed it. So the movie is, so K-Stu is dating Mackenzie Davis's character, and K-Stu, as is made abundantly clear throughout the entirety of this movie, her character is an orphan. And so she's like, yeah, I don't have nowhere to go for Christmas. Christmas really isn't my thing. So Mackenzie Davis is like, yo, you're going to come and meet my family. It's going to be great. And then that was all at night. So the next morning, she's like, I don't know about that. And K-Stu's like, what are you talking about? I'm super pumped. I get to go to Christmas with your family. This sounds great. So then, as you alluded to, it's a little bit guess who's coming to dinner, because, of course, they drive up there. Halfway through the drive, Mackenzie Davis's character is like, oh, by the way, I have not come out to my family. My family's like super conservative. My dad's running for mayor or something. I'm married. He's married to Nancy Pelosi. That's just so like
she does it. She really does resemble Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, I mean it's strong.
In a way.
It's strong Nancy Pelosi energy, and so then she's like, yeah, you got to just pretend like you're my roommate. So that's kind of the setup, is that she's going there. She's not out to her parents, but she's dating K-Stu, which honestly you should brag about. And yeah, so she has to pretend like she's not a lesbian, even though as you've alluded to as well, you have Aubrey Plaza there with like fire energy between the two of them.
Yes.
And at one point, K-Stu like goes to this party and like has like this like suit look with like the tie undone, and it's just like,
oh, she made no effort to look straight in this. Not a single effort.
It's like, I don't know. It should be. It is not. It's a lot. I just want to say this movie's not. It's not good. It's a stupid movie. But like that shows.
Okay, don't be so harsh.
But no, like at the same time, it's like, this is big progress, because like, congratulations to the LGBTQ plus community. You are now accepted enough that you get shitty Christmas movies just like all of us.
Yeah, that we get bad movies just like everyone else. And we got a Hallmark.
Congratulations.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's a stupid movie, but it's on the stupid movie level of like any of the other movies like this. But this one's a little better because K-Stu's in it. And Dan Levy.
Honestly, I think it would be a great movie if they just left out that one scene at the mall.
That's fair. There's a lot of things they could have used to improve it, but it didn't seem like that was really the point. It was like, let's let K-Stu wear some really cool outfits. Let's let her and Aubrey Plaza not kiss, even though clearly everybody wants them to. And then let's let Dan Levy just kind of chew up the room whenever he's around, and it's amazing. But honestly, it's a nice, relaxing watch. I say it's terrible not because I'm like, oh no, you shouldn't be watching. Like, no, it's not good, but it's fun. It's well worth my time. I'd watch it again. It's fun. It's a good time. I can't emphasize enough though that Mary Steenburgen is playing Nancy Pelosi. Anyway, Happiest Season. It's on Hulu. Ash, you had another movie?
Yes. So the next movie that I saw this week was Kajillionaire. I have always loved the stories, and I've never read her novel, but I've loved the short stories of Miranda July. And I was just perusing a list of movies this week and saw this movie listed, and that the director was Miranda July, and just sort of put it together after a Google that she also made movies. And so I watched Kajillionaire. It's about these parents and their 26-year-old daughter who are con artists and have trained her to be a con artist, but not like the cool kind, not like the Ocean's 11 kind, but just like really poor con artists who might scam someone for $20, and they're not very charming. They're actually very socially inept, and they're sort of treat their daughter really distantly, and so we really just sort of hit the ground running in the beginning of the movie and just sort of like get to see what their life is like for a while and get to see them do their thing. But then the first really interesting thing that happens is someone in their neighborhood offers them $20 if they will attend this motherhood or parenting class, court-ordered parenthood class for them, or for her, because she has like something to do or something. And so the daughter goes to this like parenthood class, and they're showing this like video about how like a baby bonds with its mother, and she just like has a moment. And so it becomes this, eventually, like, the plot is that their parents sort of welcome someone into their, like, little con artist gang, and the daughter becomes, like, really jealous, and it becomes this narrative about just, like, this 26-year-old who is both, like, incredibly emotionally neglected by her parents, but is also, like, severely attached to them at the same time, and about like this like fourth party who sort of interrupts this status quo. So it's just like a super interesting movie, and it's very weird and like heavy and good. Like it was really sort of incredible to watch because I know Miranda July's stories, and she just has such an amazing way of like being like really dark and really funny at the same time. And I felt like the tone and like the look of this movie was just like so exciting, because it was like I was getting to watch like one of her worlds of prose that I had never gotten to read before. So I thought it was super great. I really liked it. I think it's probably somewhere to stream. I don't know where, but
yeah, I think it's been, you know, the usual on-demand spaces.
Yeah,
so.
But I really enjoyed it.
Very cool. Seth, you had 2 movies that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I feel like I'm finally letting myself enjoy Dario Argento in a new way. I feel like I had like a thing where I just fell out and I couldn't handle him being like him feeling like this kind of pervy director where he's just like, wouldn't it be hot if I had a hot girl that I stabbed in a movie kind of thing? But like, I watched Phenomena, and it's all making sense now. It's like Jennifer Connelly talks to bugs magically and like is trying to solve this serial killer mystery while she's sleepwalking at a boarding school, and she talks to Dr. Loomis from Halloween, and he doesn't seem like all that disturbed by the fact that she can talk to flies and stuff. In fact, he just is like, all right, we're going to figure this out. I'm going to give you a mystical fly that will aid you in your journey of solving these murders. Motorhead plays randomly, like at the most improper times. Iron Maiden and Goblin, who did the Suspiria soundtrack that is so amazing, does a lot of the soundtrack for this one. But really, I just really loved it because it was so, I don't know, it's like indisputably garbled as far as the plot is concerned. It's like an insane movie. And Dario's sort of falling on his face in this glorious way where he's just like, he is not worried about just letting the contents of his brain like flow. So yeah, that one was beautiful and exhausting, I would say.
Is it? I mean, I know with Suspiria, we usually talk about a lot of the visuals and stuff. It's just so like striking visually. What about this one? Is it kind of the same?
It's gorgeous. I love Suspiria, but yeah, there was just something about this that made me get it a little bit more. And I'm ready to rewatch a lot of his movies now. And then the other one I watched was Long Weekend. It's this 1978 Australian movie. Seems very under the radar in like back of the filing cabinet. I think it needs to be reassessed or something. It's great. There's this really shitty couple who hate each other, and they're doing like a thing where they're like, it's a long weekend and we're gonna have a great time and it'll fix everything because we'll go on vacation to the beach and we'll come back and we won't have our problems, but of course they do still have their problems. And for some reason the guy hit the kangaroo on the way to the beach, and that just starts this cycle where like in Twilight Zone sort of fashion, like all of nature is like against them. Like even down to like ants eating all their food, and like their food, like even like mold seems to be against them. Like their food gets moldy too quick, and like hawks come down and like try and steal their stuff and attack them. And there's like this really strange. It's just like a really strange idea. I don't know. And it doesn't feel like as hokey as it sounds really hokey, but somehow it's pulled off in a way that's like really ominous. Like you can take it serious in the same way that you can take Jaws seriously somehow, even though it's like a ridiculous movie where they fight a shark. It's one of the few movies I would compare to that kind of feel.
Nice. Is this is it streaming anywhere, or is it available like DVD, usual sources?
I watched it on Canopy.
Oh, okay.
Get some more Canopy representation on this podcast.
Oh, I'm a big Canopy head for sure.
That's
I
true.
work at a library, so.
Nice.
Canopy's the best.
Well, Michael, I know you had a movie you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I watched Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is the third Bill and Ted movie I guess it's a series now. So this is like the series in which Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter play, well, in the original movie, they play like these kind of like meathead, like arena rock, like hair metal nerds. And they get visited by George Carlin, who tells them that in the future, their like garage band is going to become like globally important and make a song that like unites the world and creates world peace. And so he's come to help them pass their history class, because without them passing their history class, they won't make the song that unites the world. And then there's a sequel called Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which is I don't remember that one as well. I watched the original Bill and Ted a ton in like middle school and high school, but I don't really remember Bogus Journey too well, except I remember them playing like Connect Four and Twister with Death as like a riff on like the Seventh Seal, like playing chess with Death thing. But somehow that's connected. And then this one is now like 30 years later, when Bill and Ted are, since Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves are now like, 30 years older. Their characters are 30 years older, and it's set in basically the present day. And they, you may have noticed, listeners, that the present day doesn't resemble a world in which two meathead hair metal nerds have created a song that made world peace. And this is kind of the premise of the movie, in which Bill and Ted are kind of still like beating their head against the wall, trying to create like a good song that's gonna like save the world. And they've gone through like all this whole like Spinal Tap type journey where they've tried to all these different like phases of their musical careers to try to like create different songs that are gonna save the world. And the movie opens with them like basically being like at the stage that most like hair metal bands are at right now, which is that they're kind of like old and irrelevant and doing kind of embarrassing things with their music. Although to their credit, it seems like that they've like really become like students of music, and like incorporated all this like really like ambitious all these ambitious techniques from like world music. Like Bill like does like throat singing and stuff like that, like on their still like hair metal songs. But anyway, they're still not saving the world. And at this point, they're like married. They're married to like two medieval princesses that they met in their like time travel journey in the first movie. I don't think these are not the same actresses who played them. But otherwise, like there's some like recurring people from the cast, like their dads are still here, and they also have two daughters now too. With these medieval princess wives who have turned out basically like them. They're kind of like, dopey, endearing, like, music nerds who like kind of speak in the like Southern California like slang. And in this movie, someone from the future visits them. In this case, it's Kristen Shaw, because George Carlin's no longer with us. But she comes, and the movie gets really plotty really quickly, which I think is like to its detriment. But the long and short of it is they have like only 90 minutes to write the song that's going to save the world, or else somehow the universe is going to be like messed up forever. And so they decide like to go use this time machine to go into the future and meet themselves after they've written the song, so then they themselves can teach themselves the song that's going to save the universe. And the movie just kind of goes from there. It's kind of like this like goofy like time travel paradox movie, and it kind of splits into like two halves. So you have Bill and Ted who go and like visit themselves in the future, and they keep having to like jump further and further into the future because they encounter like the versions of themselves that they encounter in the future are ones that like they don't like. Like in one, they're in jail, and they jump 5 years into the future, and they're like squatting at Dave Grohl's house, and then they jump like 5 years in the future again, and they're like doing other like wacky stuff. And then their daughters at the same time like also get a time machine and are going back in time to get like the greatest musicians of all time to play the song that Bill and Ted are going to come back to the present day with. And so they like go back in time and get like Louis Armstrong and like Mozart, and like a bunch of other people too. And so like it's a pretty fun movie. I feel like it really gets like lost in the plotting eventually, which is too bad. Like the original Bill and Ted is just like this extremely like incident filled movie that like has like the simplest plot in the world. It's like they have to get historical figures to bring to the present so that they can be in their history presentation, so they can pass history class. And that's like literally the only plot of the movie. Like the movie itself is just like them visiting all these different historical time periods. And that's kind of like the vibe that I feel like that these movies work the best at. And this one has like all this like urgency and like mythology that gets a little complicated, and I think like in some ways like dulls the charm of like what the Bill and Ted movies are good at. But that charm is still there. It's still really fun just to see like Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, who are still like just really charming as these like hair metal doofuses. Like they're just like, you know, it's just really fun to see them. And then their daughters, who are played by
Bridget Lundy Payne, my love.
Yeah, and then Samara Weaving as the other one. And they're honestly great. Like I kind of wish like that Bill and Ted were like less of the movie and the daughters were more of the movie, because they're just like really energetic and have like this great vibe that is honestly a lot more in the spirit of like what the original Bill and Ted was like than this movie is, and I really like that a lot. So some really good moments. Kid Cudi shows up and he's just like incredibly hilarious in this role that he plays. Like he plays himself, and he gets like roped into playing like the greatest song ever written, and he's just like extremely hilarious. And there's like some other really fun like little bits, but then there's also some really draggy bits too because of how like narrative heavy this ends up being. So I enjoyed it. A little bit of a mixed bag, and definitely not like the height of like, you know, what this, I guess, franchise is capable of. But like, it's still a pretty good time. I had a good time with it.
Nice. And I think that's also kind of bouncing around the different streaming places. So
Yeah, it's available. I think at like all the, you know, like iTunes and Google and that sort of thing.
definitely. We still got some time, so I'll talk a little bit about a new release that just came out on Netflix. The hot topic, I guess, of the film, Twitter, whatever verse you want to say it is, Mank, which is the latest from David Fincher, known for Gone Girl, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Social Network, etc. But this is a kind of satirical biography to a degree of the making of the screenplay of Citizen Kane. And so it's taking place in kind of 1930s, 1940s Hollywood, where Herman Mankiewicz is, you kind of bounce between him working on the screenplay of Citizen Kane in his deadline with Orson Welles to get that screenplay to him, and then you kind of bounce that with his rise as a screenwriter in Hollywood, including like his relationship with Louis B. Mayer and William Randolph Hearst, and Miriam Davies, who's played by Amanda Seyfried, who's probably the best part of this movie. She's very, very good in this role. But then you also have like it's very similar to a lot of other old Hollywood redo things that are, you know, like The Artist or you know, even to a degree like La La Land, where there's like this, you know, we love the movies, and you see people like Josef von Sternberg, which I was like, yeah, it's a weird person that you guess you want to see in a old Hollywood movie. You see like David O. Selznick. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. I think those are the like kind of the main like old Hollywood names that you run into. It's not like you're running into like, you know, like Cary Grant, or there's somebody like, you know, doing like being Cary Grant or Jimmy Stewart or something, or John Wayne, where you're just like, oh my gosh. Honestly, the weirdest kind of double take you have is I'm not totally sold that the guy who plays Orson Welles really looks like Orson Welles. It's at least Orson Welles, the time of Citizen Kane, who's a pretty like attractive dude. This guy kind of just looks scrumpy. He looks like later Orson Welles. But and so then you have Gary Oldman is playing Herman Mankiewicz. I don't know, like I get like kind of what Fincher's doing. He's tackling like the creation of Citizen Kane and what kind of Citizen Kane is about through this very cynical alcoholic screenwriter who is observing all of these kind of power brokers in Hollywood and how how they're moving the chess pieces around, and great and all, but I don't know, there's just not really any I just doesn't feel like there's any cut to it. It just feels like we're kind of bouncing around. We have these various sequences with like Mankiewicz talking to the different characters and different folks and these different icons of the era. Like he has these extended sequences with like with Louis B. Mayer talking about the industry. It centers like part of the story around the 1934, I might get that wrong, gubernatorial election in California between oh shoot guys,
Zach, are you telling me that you don't know all of the gubernatorial
candidates
candidates from the 1930s?
Oh, I definitely know. I'm not telling though.
No, but I just watched the goddamn movie with it. So you got it's Frank Merriam and Upton Sinclair, which you have this Upton Sinclair character who, I shit you not, is played by Bill Nye the Science Guy, who's pretty much, I think Nathan has already made a joke about it. It's like they just kind of like plant like Bill Nye the Science Guy playing Upton Sinclair as Bernie Sanders in this movie, and it's strange. And so you clearly have like this kind of more left-leaning Mankiewicz who's watching as like you have like Louis B. Mayer, who's like the chair of the Republican Party in California, kind of anytime the name Upton Sinclair and socialism is brought up, like there's this whole dinner party conversation scene that they have where they're talking about socialism and Upton Sinclair, and it just feels like you've been dropped into these like kind of centrist lib Facebook groups, which is pretty like it's just like this kind of like weird, like I get he's trying to go like, oh, like they were having these conversations in 1930s America that they're having it today, and I'm like, yeah, but there's no substance to it. It's just you're it's kind of just the pointing at it going, yeah, isn't that crazy? And you're like, yes, well, what are you gonna do with that information? And he's just like, nothing, he's gonna get drunk again. And so I don't know. I don't really know what the point at the end of the day of this is, other than to just kind of revel in getting to, play around in the, 1930s era Hollywood sandbox and show, kind of take stabs at Orson Welles and yeah, so I don't know. It's pretty forgettable to me, honestly. I would say it would be like an awards play. I don't really think so though. There's nobody like in this that's just blowing your mind. Like Amanda Seyfried's probably the best. It's not probably, is the best person in this movie, and everybody else is pretty forgettable. Gary Oldman's clearly having a nice coast because he caked makeup on his face playing Winston Churchill to win an Oscar, so he's having a fun time, I guess. But other than that, it's pretty forgettable. And so I would say skip Mank and go watch Citizen Kane, because I rewatched Citizen Kane before I watched this, and unpopular opinion, it's a great movie. It's a really good movie. I don't know. This
Gonna get some mail about that one.
Well, it's almost like to the point now where you kind of just scoff at it because you see it number one on so many lists, and I get that. That's fair. It's not the number one movie of all time. That seems absurd, but it's still a good movie. Like, it's pretty entertaining. If anything, there's more cut in Citizen Kane than there is in Mank, So,
do you think, so, like, there's, like, that really famous, like, Pauline Kael essay that a lot of people don't like, where she kind of pushes this idea that, like, Orson Welles, like, had nothing to do with what made, like, Citizen Kane great. And, like, I do feel like that there's, like, whether or not people like really buy into like the premise of that essay, there is like because Orson Welles was such like a pompous like dude.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
that there's like a real impulse for people to want to take him down a peg. Do you feel like that's like part of the thing that this movie's going for, or not?
Yeah, a little bit. Like there's a little like, because you don't really see much of him, and then you have this kind of pronounced scene between Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz at the very end of the movie that is very much like, it's almost like David Fincher is plastering the Pauline Kael essay on the screen, and it's like we just stare at that for 5 minutes and then the movie ends. And I don't really get that. Like, I get that Orson Welles was pompous and kind of an asshole, but he also was super talented. It's I saw somebody made the point, like, okay, sure, if he didn't write it, like, that's not the only thing that's good about Citizen Kane. Like, Orson Welles also produced and directed and starred, and it's just, so it's kind of silly to discount him and being a part of this. I think this movie is trying to kind of, I guess, give a little bit of a pat on the back to like these types of screenwriters, because like Herman Mankiewicz is not like a they very much paint the picture, especially early in the film, of like him as talented, but one of many mouths that are in a writing room. Like, there's this scene very early on where it's like him, and you have somebody like Ben Hecht, somebody playing Ben Hecht in this scene, who is a very well-known writer of that time, and people like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, this guy was talented, but he was, I guess it's kind of more of like a FU to the auteur theory, where it's like, yeah, Orson Welles might be great, but there was also all these other people who are great who, are kind of overshadowed by his personality and mythology. And so don't forget, it's kind of like a don't forget the little people. Also, we don't remember the little people in politics. So go vote. I don't know what he's saying with the political.
There's like, it is kind of interesting how like David Fincher has become like kind of like an auteur person for like a certain film crowd, considering that he doesn't do a lot of writing, and like you could pretty easily call him like a journeyman director as well. And it might, I don't know, I've not seen the movie, but it's kind of interesting like how auteur theory intersects his work.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I told Seth before we started recording, like, if I didn't tell you that David Fincher directed this, I don't feel like you could tell. It's kind of, it doesn't really feel, he had like that period starting, I would say, with The Social Network, where like The Social Network and Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Gone Girl, and then kind of going into TV with like House of Cards and Mindhunter, they all have like this kind of they do have like this kind of look to them. They very much have like this aesthetic in place that is very, that almost feels auteurist to a degree. This kind of beige monochrome minimalism to them that, I mean, works for me to a degree. But here, I don't know, it's what he's trying to do here, it just didn't really work. It felt more in line with like the artist than something interesting, I guess. So, Mank.
Did we at least get a good Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score?
Yeah, it's Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross doing Bernard Herrmann. So.
Okay. Nice.
So it's, it's fine. It's not their best score of the year. I would give that to their work in Watchmen, the HBO series. But, Mank, it's on Netflix. Go watch Citizen Kane. All right, we're going to be back in a quick second. We're going to take a break, and then we'll be back talking Yuri Norstein after this.
Cinematary listeners. This is your favorite Filipino podcaster, Jessica Carr. I'm here to let you know about a couple of things that Cinematary offers that you might not know about. First, if you're a fan of what Cinematary is doing, please consider joining us on Patreon. Remember when we weren't clamoring for your dollars? Now we're just clamoring for 5 of your dollars. So please help us and donate to our Patreon, and then you'll get exclusive content from our staff, including our Film Theory and Chill series, where a panel takes a piece of theory each month and deconstructs it before diving into whatever topic is on their mind from the past week. The $5 each month is investment in the website and the podcast, and it goes solely to paying our writers for the reviews each week, so please consider doing it. It's only $5. If you missed an episode of Cinematary or a piece of writing we've had, you should consider signing up for our free newsletter. Each Sunday, we send out a note with the latest podcast episode, piece of Patreon content, and the last 2 reviews that we've written at cinematary.com. It's perfect for those of you who are interested in what's happening, and it makes sure that you don't miss a single Cinematary review. Finally, the easiest thing that you can do to help us is to please give us a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever else you're using to listen to the show. This helps us get more eyeballs and ears on the podcast and the website, and it helps the people know about Cinematary, which is really what we're here for. So to recap, consider donating to our Patreon, sign up for the free newsletter, and give us a rating or review. We would really appreciate if you could do these things. Thank you for listening, and now back to the show.
And we're back with part 2 of episode 329 of Cinematary. In this part, we'll be talking about a selection of short films by the Soviet Union Russian animator Yuri Norstein. So a brief little background on him. He first worked as a phaser, cartoonist, and animator, and then together with Arkady Turin, he made 25th October, the First Day in 1968. A film inspired by Soviet propaganda visuals. With Ivan Ivanov Vano, he made Seasons in 1969, which won a number of prizes, and then he followed that up with The Battle of Kuznets in 1971, which is based on a work by the great composer Rimsky-Korsakov, visually leaning on the Russian medieval visual tradition. And then he moved on to be an independent filmmaker, and he leaned mostly on folklore, fairy tale, and other traditional elements, constantly perfecting photography, animation, and post-production techniques, developing a new, unique, and recognizable artistical handwriting. Some of his films, The Fox and the Hare from 1973, The Heron and the Crane from 1974, and Hedgehog in the Fog from 1975. Are some of his well-known works, and his masterpiece is generally considered to be Tale of Tales from 1979. First, we're going to talk about The Heron and the Crane from 1974. It's based on the folk tale about the unlucky, never-ending courtship of the title characters, a male crane and a female heron, ever changing their own minds. My thought to myself while watching this movie was, this is just Yuri Norstein doing Tinder. The film marked the first of several collaborations among Norstein, his wife, the artist Francesca Yarbusova, and a cameraman, Alexander Zhukovsky. To achieve Norstein's artistic vision, they invented a special piece of equipment which allowed them to animate on layers of grass. Norstein's original script was not approved by the studio administration. Veteran director Roman Kachinov was assigned to serve as project supervisor and write an acceptable script. Unbeknownst to the studio administration, though, Norstein filmed his original script. So on that note, let's talk a little bit about Heron and the Crane. Like, I mean, it's pretty simple. They, it's a will they, won't they, except they're frustratingly uncommittal. That is true. Seth, I'm gonna lead off with you. I guess, first, what were your impressions? Actually, let's back that up. First, do you have any history with Yuri Norstein? Are you familiar with him as a director? And then I guess your thoughts on Heron and the Crane.
Well, I had always seen like Hedgehog in the Fog being like really hyped up online and things like that, and I just never got around to watching it. I had no idea, I don't know how, about Tale of Tales, and I didn't know about his other short work. I don't know where I've been, but I'm born anew. It's so good. But this one, I felt like, and did you say he animates on grass?
Yeah, they found a way to be able to kind of like animate on layers of grass.
What?
Wait. Grass or glass?
Glass. I'm sorry.
I'm like,
It's like, I was like about to be like, whoa, my mind is, wow. Revolutionary grass art.
Nobody ever talks about that.
Nobody ever talks about it. But I found it really like, it was just so sad. It was just such a bummer because it just they kept getting back together. They just gotta stop, these two cranes. And
one's a heron, as one makes clear at the beginning.
Oh,
yes.
Different speed. That adds a whole layer to this.
Well, but the crane thinks that she might be part crane.
You mean the heron might be part crane?
Yeah, the crane thinks that the heron
okay.
might
said
be
the
part
crane thinks that she might be part crane, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean,
100% part crane.
But what I did find in this one is something that I found in like all the movies that I've seen by him, which is this sort of non-ending. Just like if it feels like we're like not like a sharp cutoff or anything like that, but like it just the feeling that like this story is just going to keep going. There's more after this, which the end of this is obviously the continued chaos of this toxic relationship that these two birds have.
Yeah. Ash, what did you make of the short?
I really love the animation style. I love the sound effects too. This is the sort of cartoon that I just want playing in the background at all times. It's just really sort of soothing to me. The narrative, I mean, maybe it's not obvious, but I would agree with Seth. It's just sort of like stressful. The narrative of it, it's like, okay, we get it. I did really like the scene though when Mr. Crane comes over with the hat and the like wood burning stove, and they like do a little dance and he has a little hat and then he like storms off. I guess he's like really easily offended or something, but yeah, they clearly just shouldn't be together. And I think that Mr. Crane, a snappy dresser, could find himself a proper mate, and Heron, I don't know what's going on with her, some serious scoliosis or something. Yeah, she could find someone else too. I don't know.
The heron and the crane too. We go our separate ways and
go to the chiropractor.
Michael.
I was just gonna say, I'm curious if there is anyone else. Like, I think one thing that is similar, like among all three of these, is that like the movies create these little worlds that feel like incredibly like isolated and self-contained, you know, like the hedgehog going into the fog. Or like in this one, I mean, do we see any other animals? Like, I feel like it's just them. Like, it's almost like this like mythic, like cosmic, like they have no choice but to go back and forth with one another forever, which is like, I think, a cool like narrative effect. And I had seen the other two, Tale of Tales and Hedgehog in the Fog, before, but I hadn't seen this one, and I liked how I guess it wasn't stressful for me. It felt like playful in a way that the other two don't necessarily. And I really like that. Like it's like comedic in a way. Just like watching like these animals become their own like worst enemies, even as they're like pursuing each other, is like there's like something funny about it, I guess, to me. I don't know though. Like I sometimes like think about like there are like little fables or fairy tales that I think are funny that maybe aren't actually that funny. Like there's the one that where like the gingerbread man, right, where he's like running as fast as he can, and at the end he like gets a fox to like have him go across the river, and the fox just like eats him or something. And like I think that's kind of funny. So maybe I'm not like maybe I just have like I don't know, maybe I just lack empathy for fairy tale characters, and I just like to see them in like cosmic suffering. But I'm right with you, Ash. Like I love the animation style, and like I think it's interesting. Like I've not seen a ton of Soviet animation besides this guy's, but like I've seen other animation from like the Soviet bloc, like specifically like Eastern Europe. And they all have this really like tactile, like stop motion. Sometimes it's like actually like 3D models with stop motion, which I know that Norstein uses in the other two shorts that we watched today. But like the Czech animation is so heavy on like stop motion. It's all really textured, like this is too. Like if you look at like Western animation, like it's very like much in the cartoon style most of the time, where like, you know, there's these big blotches of solid color and like thick lines like animating characters, whereas this is like really like it feels like these woodland creatures were constructed out of objects found in the woods. And I know that that's not actually the case, but it like has that feel to it. And I don't know if there's like a larger cultural reason why like the East, as defined by like the Soviet Union, like has this kind of like almost unifying like aesthetic to it, but it is really interesting to me, and I'm always like really entranced by it too.
It reminded me of like Terry Gilliam. He must have been a fan on Holy Grail and Monty Python and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like it's got that element of it for sure. I can see that too.
Not in content at all, but the way it looks, of course. Yeah,
for sure. Like I don't know. I mean, with Gilliam, it's clear that these are like cutouts that he's like rotating and stuff like that. And there's like a little bit of a feel of that too, where, you know, the characters' limbs and stuff they seem like cutouts that they can like rotate really easily, but not actually change the shape of that much. And so the characters kind of have this like puppetry kind of effect as they move.
Yeah, this one felt like, I mean, I think you might have alluded to it in like how he has like the 3D characters moving in kind of a stop motion manner in the other ones, but this one also just kind of feels much more. I guess to Ash's point, like it does feel like all of these characters need a chiropractor. They seem like they're kind of drawn in a way that seems much more kind of deformed or kind of I don't know, that like it seems like the texture of these characters is much different than like Hedgehog in the Fog, which is a little bit more straightforward in terms of like all of the creatures look like the creatures that you would assume, and in Tale of Tales it's so it's kind of bouncing around and moving around in such dreamlike fashion that nobody ever really, outside of the kind of wolf character that you're following around, really takes any shape. And so I don't know, this one just felt very expressionistic in its look, more, at least more so than the other two.
I feel like this one is less interested in like creating moments of like kind of visual splendor. Like, I mean, there's some really impressive scenes.
I really like the fireworks scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really impressive looking stuff here, but like compared to like some of the stuff in Hedgehog and the Fog and especially Tale of Tales, like both of those feel like he's really pushing to make like some like artistic vision, and like it's not like this isn't like really skillfully done and there's some really great stuff, but it seems like he's less interested in creating like splendor, and it's more interested in like almost grotesque, not completely, but there's a grotesque element to this that's not present in the other ones. I don't think.
No, I would agree. Well, speaking of splendor, I think this one, that's a great way to kind of describe the second short, and that's Hedgehog in the Fog from 1975.
Yes, we love the hedgehog.
The story in this one is there's a hedgehog that sets off for his evening visit with his friend the bear cub. Every evening the two meet to have tea and count the stars, as one does with their friend. And on this day, Hedgehog is bringing bear cub some raspberry jam as a special treat. And as he heads out, a sinister-looking eagle owl stalks him, and he comes across a white mare in the meadow. The Russian script was written by Sergei Kozlov, who also published a book under the same name. And in 2006, Norstein published a book titled Hedgehog in the Fog, listing himself as an author alongside Kozlov. The fog effects in the film were created by putting a very thin piece of paper on top of the scene and slowly lifting it up towards the camera frame until everything behind it became blurry and white. Isn't that crazy? Soviet-era children's animation and literature was faced with the task of producing politically acceptable content. Anthropologist Sergei Oshkanai recognizes this atmosphere of indefinite deferment in the animation, stating, quote, "The main thing is the work of imagination, and more precisely the terror and pleasure with which it is linked. The final scene of pleasure to which these various phantasmal and or realistic experiences should indeed have led is not included in the plot. This is evident through the hedgehog's anxiety and fixation on the horse, even after he succeeds in meeting the bear for tea." Just a nice little tidbit. Hayao Miyazaki, acclaimed animator of Studio Ghibli, stated he drew his inspiration from many animators, but one of the top ones was Yuri Norstein in his work in Hedgehog in the Fog. So on that note, let's talk about this one. I had seen this film. This was kind of my one Yuri Norstein film under my belt up to this point. And it was really fun to revisit it because you forget just how truly like celestial this movie is. I mean, I mentioned the thing about the fog effects, but you just have this insane dreamlike element, just this fairy tale dreamlike element to it. But then also just on like a technical level, you just marvel at everything that's happening over the course of like this 11 minutes, because it's also something that's animated in a way that, at least for me, is like I've never seen anything like this. But what did you all think?
It's really good.
Yeah, between this one and Tale of Tales, I just have like endless questions technically, like that I feel like only he can answer. I'm just like, how do you create? It's like I'm so confused by this. I'm like picturing how this is done on a multi-plane camera, like which is like shooting downward at layers of glass, and like creating depth of like a hedgehog looking up at a tree that feels like it's three-dimensional or something and extremely large. There's just such a mood. There's just such a mood with this one. And the ending is so startling as well.
Yeah, it's like really haunting, like the ending.
I had to watch it twice, like immediately, because I just was like, what?
I feel like one of the things that like connects like this one and then Tale of Tales, and then also like I was kind of looking through Letterboxd and a lot of people compared Tale of Tales, but I think like there's an element of this in Hedgehog in the Fog too. A lot of people compared it to like Tarkovsky, and I think like one element for these two shorts is this kind of Tarkovsky style like sense of transcendence. Like there are like objects that get fixated upon that like take on like this almost like spiritual like intensity as far as like the way it is presented. Like that horse, like there's that shot where he's like floating down the river, the hedgehog is, and like the horse's snout, like it's like a POV shot from the hedgehog and the horse's snout is just kind of like right there. And like the horse is just this like mystic like creature that like just has this like really like haunting presence within the film, in the same way that like I don't know, like if you look at like Stalker or something like that in Tarkovsky's, where there's just like objects or environments that like totally like just like and like grow and take on like something that is like much bigger than it feels like that the film can contain. And that ending, I think, like where he's like he can't stop thinking about the horse, like I feel like that's like the whole effect of the movie itself, where like you've finished the movie and the head is what like the actual temporal boundaries of that adventure. And I kind of feel the same way about the movie. Like there's something about it that it becomes like so significant and like mystical that it like transcends the temporal boundaries of like his actual time with them, and they kind of like haunt him afterwards. I kind of feel the same way about like just the effect of this movie, where there's just something about like the just the aesthetic accumulation of like these images that makes it like feel so much larger than like the 10 minutes that this movie exists in. Like it really feels like there like it transcends like whatever like material or temporal like technicalities that make it up. Like I don't know, like it's just super cool to me.
Yeah, no, I mean I agree. I remember the first time I watched this because I forgot where I saw it, but it was like, yeah, this is an animated film you should see. And I remember being really, and maybe still today, I'm unable to kind of describe like what's effective about it, but it just feels like it kind of is living in this space that it's couched with this kind of folktale, fairy tale aesthetic, where you are kind of in this fantastical land, this fantastical space for the runtime of the film, but it also feels like there's just kind of something like peering deeper, and that's kind of like to the point of the kind of anxiety of the hedgehog is like the the fog is kind of encompassing him. Like there's just like this lack of clarity for more that feels like it's kind of around you as you're like absorbing all of these images, but it doesn't feel like you're really getting everything. Like you can't make out clearly exactly what is really affecting you. And to, that effect just completely becomes like rather than like satisfying, it becomes just like this curiosity that it leaves you with, which I think is really fun in terms of just a film that's this short, that's just 10, 11 minutes, but also one that is so uniquely animated.
I think also like this movie and like all of his movies are really good at things that are really difficult to do in animation. Like Fog is really difficult to like make look cool in animation, and like Rain can be very difficult in animation, and water, like, but they look so good in these movies. Like there's something kind of really cool about like how this is able to like do things that you've never seen in animation before, because it's just hard to find a technique that makes like a splash of water not just look like a cartoon, for example. And like this movie and Tale of Tales also, like it does it in a way that like I just never see in animation.
Yeah, absolutely. Ash, I don't think we've heard from you. What did you make of Hedgehog in the Fog?
I love the hedgehog. I'm amazed to hear about the fog and how it was created. I don't feel like I have a lot to say about this movie that hasn't already been said. I'd seen it before, and I watched it again, and it's just like a really nice movie to watch all around. I feel like visually, like this one and Tale of Tales. It's such a silly name to me for some reason. Are just so visually incredible. But as we'll get to in a second, I don't know if Tale of Tales is like as feel good of a movie as Hedgehog in the Fog. And like similarly, like I love like the look and the feel of Heron and the Crane too, but like the plot is like not exactly what you want. But this one is just like, it begins so nicely. It's like, this little hedgehog, and oh, I'm going to see my friend, and I'm going to take him some jam, and it is going to be so special. And that is so nice. And you just can't help but smile when you start watching this movie. And for some reason, like, that little thing just, like, gets me so invested, unironically, in this little hedgehog. And I care about him so much. And, so everything that happens after that is, like, so intense. And also it's just visually incredible. I don't know how he made that fog with a sheet of paper. I love our hedgehog, boy.
I definitely agree that the trajectory of the plot is really, it really adds an intensity because of how like innocent it begins and how sort of, I don't know, there's something like almost like it's post-trauma or like post-war that maybe like Norstein is thinking about. Like it almost like to use like a crude example, it's like reminded me of like the Lord of the Rings. Like the hobbits are like, it's gonna be fun, we're gonna go on a little adventure, and then like whoa, it's bad, it's all bad out here, and then they come back and like the hedgehog, he like finally gets to his destination, which is like supposed to be a fun night with his friend, and he's like wide-eyed, like he's seen shit, you know, and he like, it feels like I don't know if he's gonna enjoy this night. It almost feels like he's broken or something by the end or something. Like, I don't know, it's a very strange ending that we're left with. I worry about our hedgehog guy at the end.
Well, it's kind of functioning, you know, in that fairy tale element to a degree. You know, like you mentioned with like Lord of the Rings, you have that call to adventure is always like kind of bright and shiny. I mean, you can go to like, you know, Grimm fairy tales and look at like Little Red Riding Hood, and initially she's just, you know, hopping down the woods to go and see her grandma, and then of course when she gets there, there's a wolf, and it's, you know, her grandma's gone, and et cetera, and so it's like that's, you kind of have like that fairy tale structure of, oh, the hedgehog is rolling, you know, through the woods, he's gonna go see his friend the bear cub, they're gonna drink tea and count the stars, and then there's just kind of this anxious fervor that like, and this one almost is more like I kind of get on the level with this one more than even like more traditional fairy tales, because with traditional fairy tales, like there is like this very like strict, like in Little Red Riding Hood, like the wolf is the bad guy. You know, it's not, there's not really much ambiguity, and that's what's kind of interesting about Hedgehog in the Fog is like there is like this ambiguity, like there's not really, I mean, the owl like kind of follows him around, but I never feel like there's any imminent danger. It's just always like this undefined, in the distant danger that seems to be like unquantifiable, if that makes sense.
Well, and like it's like danger that's kind of unsettling because the danger is from like the disorientation of like being in the fog. There's not like a single thing to fixate on it's just the like unknowability of like being surrounded by all this like mysterious, like half shrouded stuff.
It reminds me of like an awful week at work or something, but you're looking forward to like Friday when the fun thing is going to happen. And then like you get to the party and like all you can think about is like all the horrible things that happened over the week, or you're like what you're going to have to do next week or something. And it's like it ruins the party.
Since we're going to struggle with, kind of describing how we feel about Hedgehog in the Fog, let's go in the Tale of Tales, which is even more nondescript. This one from 1979. There's not really a plot for this one. You kind of have like this wolf character you follow, but I mean, it's been described by Norstein and others as like just dreamlike logic as you kind of flow through these different these different folk tales and fairy tales and things of that nature. But for the most part, it's very out of body to a degree. You're very much just kind of nondescriptly floating. I did want to mention this little note about the music. So you have an original score by Mikhail Mayerovich, but you also have a lot of other pieces of classical music. So you have excerpts from like Bach and Mozart, and then it has this World War II era tango "Weary Sun" that is featured prominently. But the most important kind of musical inspiration is the traditional Russian lullaby, which is included both in instrumental and vocal form, and kind of works as like a kind of a guiding light through this film. And then I also found that Norstein wrote in a magazine that the film is, quote, about simple concepts that give you the strength to live, which is broad. So yeah, Tale of Tales. This one I really it's difficult to put my thumb on what I liked about this, but I like this one a lot. It was definitely an experience. But I'm curious what you all made of it. Michael, what did you make of Tale of Tales?
I like it. So this is my second time seeing it, and I don't feel like I have any better understanding of like the like narrative elements of it.
I can't imagine you could.
Time. Yeah, like and what it reminds me a lot of is like literary modernism. Like if you've read like James Joyce, or there's this American one called Cain by Gene Toomer that integrates a lot of like American like folk literature or folk stories and like that sort of thing. And like it kind of reminds me of that, where you're taking like these kind of like cultural signifiers or like stuff like that, and then like filtering it through this extremely like stream of consciousness like thing, where like there's just this kind of like free associative approach to like what is happening, and I really like that sort of thing, and I really dug this, and just how like inscrutable it is. Like I like Hedgehog in the Fog, and it's like straightforward narrative that like the narrative is able to like make it haunting because of the way that like it's haunted the hedgehog. But then this is like, instead of having a story about the hedgehog, this is like being the hedgehog in a way, or I guess this little wolf creature. But like, you like become like you the point of view that you enter is one of confusion, rather than seeing a character who's like confused and scared. Like you're inside of that now, and I think that this is a really cool effect, and I like it. It also strikes me as like way more like aesthetically ambitious than the other ones too. Like, I'm not always 100% sure how those other movies were made, but this one definitely seems like it was made with like he increased his like tools, and like tried different techniques. Like I think that there's like maybe like photography that's incorporated, perhaps.
Yeah, there are like these like kind of like photorealist elements to it, that kind of pop up a little bit.
Yeah, like I remember there's like a shot with like a bunch of cars in it that I remember it struck me as like these look like photos to me, and so I like that too. Where especially like since I watched these movies in like chronological order, where I started with the Heron and the Crane, and then Hedgehog in the Fog, and then this one. It felt like his ambitions for like the animation were just like blossoming and like getting bigger and bigger. And so I like kind of like that just on like a meta level, where like you're watching this and in this movie you're like, wow, I didn't know he could do that sort of thing with his movies. And I felt like that a lot watching this.
Seth, what did you make of this one?
It definitely, modernism comes to mind for sure. I read a lot about this one before I watched it, and I get a little worried when I like start seeing things that it's like autobiographical or something like that it was like a story of like the artist as a brooding young man or something. But then I read that it was co-written by that playwright who is a woman, so it is like it adds like this flavor of it is about memory, and it's about like, but they're very broad, like very universal, especially for their generation, I think, like universal experiences, but for any generation, I think, and it really adds to it feeling like the way memories feel, the way it flows, that I don't look back on, especially when we're talking about childhood memories, I don't look back on memories like with like a full scene in mind. It's always like a hodgepodge of probably like a whole year sometimes, like in one like cycling sort of phasing in and out of different moments and things like that. And like certain images are like fetishized, like there's like apples and various like lullaby motifs, and like some animals are apparently based off of Russian lullabies. So it's all kind of blurring together the way memories do. It also reminded me of my favorite book by Samuel R. Delany. He's this great black sci-fi writer from like the 70s. And he wrote this book called Dahlgren, which is about this guy who has amnesia, and he just wanders into this city, and the city is like this lost like ghost city or something, and it starts to replicate sort of his placeless mindset, so that like the whole city, like you can't find the same road twice half the time. And again like a very visual version of how our memories are sort of this blob in our brains that doesn't always make cohesive sense, but it makes sense to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Ash, what about you?
This movie was scary. The first bit, and it comes back in the end when there's like the baby that's sucking on the nipple, and its like mouth is like it's like cheek is moving. Whenever we see that for the first time, I literally had no idea what I was looking at. I just knew that I hated it.
No, that is crazy.
And then I realized what it was whenever the baby pulls its face away, and I was like, oh. And so when it came the second time, I knew what was happening, but I still hated it. The little wolf friend is cool. I was sort of... obviously, there's not really, as you guys are saying, like a perfectly like linear plot, but you know, I sort of was wondering about the whole, like it seemed to me like there were sort of two things going on, like and some of this is what Seth was just saying, but like the way that there's like sort of I sort of saw it as a frame, like the first bit that we get, and then like how it comes back in the end, and then there's like the whole thing in the middle about like the soldiers or like the men and the women are dancing, and then they like disappear and they go away soldiers, and then like a bunch of them die or whatever. And then we sort of like return to the like domestic scene, where there's like the buffalo jump roping and the cat like making fun of the guy who plays the harp and like just all that crazy shit. And then the wolf boy steals the baby, which I thought was nuts. And he seemed like really like weird about it. Like he didn't want to do it, but he had to do it in a way. And yeah, but he's just like, he's still, it seemed like he was a little wolf boy. He's not like drawn as a big scary thing, and he's just like kind of sheepish about the way that he like steals this baby. And he's like, like this is the prophecy, I must do it. And then he's just like, all right, I'm gonna make the baby go back to sleep. So I was trying to sort of like put together like if there was a connection between those two narratives, or like if there was, or if it was just like meant to be disconnected, or what. But yeah, I sort of like Seth's take on it about memory.
The wolf freaked me out too. I thought he was going to be nice to the baby, and then he starts like, he's rocking the baby, and then he's rocking it too hard, and it's like,
yeah, he shakes it really fast.
And then we just pan away, and I'm like, is he going to eat it?
It is like, there's also that shot where the dude's like rolled up a piece of paper, it's like a scroll, and then it becomes the baby, and you guys remember what I'm talking about? Which is also really like weird and upsetting too, that like all of a sudden there's like a baby. And I don't know, it is definitely like memory like, but it's also like, it feels like kind of like a dream too, like the nightmarish kind of dream where like the inevitability of it like feels very like dreamlike or subconscious, like where there's this like unavoidable thing and that you're involved with, and you keep thinking that like you've escaped it and it keeps wrapping itself back around. But then also it's maybe because you've done it yourself, and like there's like that line between like lucidity and like agency in a dream versus like, the feeling of things just keep happening that are out of your control. And like it kind of feels like that's a little bit of like what's going on with the wolf and the baby too. I don't know. It is really like disconcerting.
I know the wolf is a part of one of those lullabies that like the wolf and the buffalo, I think, are like Russian like lullabies. And it's almost like that's like even the fiction that we're given is like blurring into the memory that we're looking back on. It's really weird. Like a song we listen to is like invading like the old memories we have or something. It's really strange.
Any final thoughts on any of the three shorts? I guess what was everybody's favorite?
Oh, Hedgehog.
I want to say Hedgehog, but also like I feel like if I give Tale of Tale a few more watches, it may overtake Hedgehog, just because there's a lot going on in it and a lot to grasp.
I feel the same way.
Yeah, there's just something about like Hedgehog I like a lot, but it feels like, and I'll enjoy it when I rewatch it more. But I think that it's not that I understand the movie like 100%, but I understand what the movie's about. And I think like Tale of Tales, I'm still kind of like poking at like what am I supposed to be taking out of this? And some of that imagery in Tale of Tales is just so cool and so interesting, but I also am having trouble fitting it into a larger like framework. So if I can figure out that, it may overtake Hedgehog.
Yeah, Tale of Tales just like reminds me that like what the hell is Overcoat going to be if it is ever finished?
Yeah.
Like his feature-length film that he's been working on for decades. Like I can't even imagine.
Yeah, this is I didn't realize, we were talking about this off mic, but I didn't realize that A, this guy was still alive, but B, that he had been working on a feature film for like 40 years. And yeah, like each of his movies seems to be like escalating in complexity, and I don't know if it's been like 40 years of writer's block or something for him, but it does feel like that, like he's like working toward like some sort of feature length sensibility that is just kind of wildly experimental. Because like Tale of Tales, we didn't mention this, but like Tale of Tales is like triple the length of the other ones that we watched. Like it's his longest work by far, I'm pretty sure. And maybe that it's approaching like what he is interested in doing at the feature length level. I don't know,
but I will if they want to like Other Side of the Wind drop this just out of nowhere somewhere, that sounds great.
yeah, get it in there. There's not like a great history of like really like long percolating animated projects like ending well. Like a lot of times the person either dies or their financiers force them to release it unfinished. So I'm hoping that this guy can keep on going with whatever he's doing and put it out in his own time.
Well, that will wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, on Letterboxd, or on Twitter and Instagram at handle @Cinematary, and on Letterboxd at letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we post all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematary. We have we'll hopefully get a nice little Patreon exclusive for you this month. But thank you so much to our patrons, Cam, Chad Newsom, Christina Daughtry, Harry Eskin, Joe Jordan, Maggie, Ron Hayes, the Kittiest of Kittens, Titus Arthur, Tyler Chandler, Whitney Rio Ross. Thank you so much for your patronage. Next week we'll be continuing our world animation series with 1981's The Son of the White Mare. But until then, thank you guys for listening.